This, my friends, is the Google Pixel 6a, the newest addition to the A series stable. At the moment, you basically have the regular 6 and 6 Pro holding up the upper, mid, and high end respectively, and then you have this thing right here, the more affordable 6a that straddles the middle ground. Now, I've spent a couple weeks with this little powerhouse, so in this video, I'm gonna share my top likes and dislikes, and then at the end, we'll discuss whether this is the mid-budget phone to get, or is it a little too late? Just for fun, I brought along the bigger 6 to do a little comparison, so grab a snack, guys, and your favorite beverage, and let's do this! I've talked about the specs in more detail in the unboxing video, so in case you're interested, I'll link it up above right here. But real quickly, this thing retails for $450 and it comes in 3 different colors. And the dimensions are nice and small, 152mm tall, 72mm wide, and 9mm for most of the body except for the camera hump. That adds around 1 to 1.25mm, which is a far cry from the thick one. I think it was 3mm tall for the regular 6 and 6 Pro, but it does take away from the natural finger rest from before. Now it's more flush. Now, one thing I also did not see or notice in the unboxing, but I did now after some long-term testing, is the double tap to launch your Google Assistant or whatever action or app that you want to set up with. That is follow through from the 6 and 6 Pro, which is nice to have. The screen is a 6.1-inch 1080 by 2400 OLED with Gorilla Glass 3, 6GB of RAM, 128GB of storage, Google Tensor, of course, with the Titan M2 chip from the 6 and 6 Pro, dual SIM, one physical and one eSIM, and there's NFC, Bluetooth 5.2, stereo speakers, one down here and one at the top paired together. 2 cams at the back, both about 12 megapixels, one a regular and another is a wide angle, and there's a flash right here, of course. And at the front we have a regular, kind of a low spec 8 megapixel f2.0 that's only capable of 1080 by 30 frames per second in terms of video. Under the screen is the fingerprint sensor, located a decent height from the bottom, so it's an easy reach for your thumb. And I'll compare the speeds between this 6a and the regular 6 later on. IP67 water dust resistance, battery capacity is 4100 milliamp hours with 18 watts fast charging. There is no wireless charging in case you're wondering. The biggest head scratcher in a good way is the camera. And it's not the camera tech itself, because it's already quite a known fact out there that the 6a carries over hardware from like way back. It's ancient, like think Pixel 3 ancient. But it's in the results, guys. The 6a consistently takes pretty fantastic pictures and videos, demonstrating yet again Google's software voodoo magic, doing all the work in the background for you where it matters. It's really like fine wine when you think about it. Google has had like 4 years to refine the formula for the sensor, and it really shows. But it's only when you start pixel peeping when you'll see the 50 megapixel on the 6 providing greater detail all around. In other words, go with the 6 or 6 Pro if you want to zoom in a lot or make large prints. Though I have to say the 6a is still good enough to do like 8x10s at a pinch. Now, looking at the 6 in a bubble though, you'll be happy to post almost any picture it takes on Insta, for example. As you can see from the samples, the 6a also holds up surprisingly really well against the more spec'd out 6, with some minor differences. In 90% of the shots I took, the 6a automatically lifted the dark areas like shadows, more so than the 6, with some detriment of noise. It's subtle but definitely noticeable. Indoor shots with high contrast is where the 6 and 6 Pro trumps the 6a most of the time. This shot taken from inside a barn pointing at the loft shows a blown out sky, whereas its older sibling correctly renders the proper colors. In bright outdoor shots, the exposure can also be quite different between the two. Not necessarily due to the sensors, by the way, but on the regular 6, you might have heard of this problem, there's light refraction entering the glass camera hump, so all that light bouncing around is bound to cause exposure challenges. Thankfully, my phone doesn't really have this problem when you see the samples, because it's mostly solved with my phone case that covers the corners of the glass. Okay guys, we're going to be doing the video stabilization first. I'm running down my trail here. I also have the live final file that I'm going to show in a second, but I also wanted to show you the preview and how it looks like between the two and stabilization. Alright, it's a nice sunny morning. It's around 8 a.m. The screen on the right side is the 6 and the left is the 6A, and you can see just how different they are in terms of color rendering. They're quite similar. Right now is low tide on the Penobscot River, as you can see right here. I'm gonna quickly pan around, by the way. How's the screen tearing? Any screen tearing? It's a little bit stronger, I think, on the 6. Can you tell that? See that as the trees pass by? It's the same thing I experienced when I pitted the regular 6 with the Samsung Flip 3. It's the same thing. I wonder if it's the 90 Hz screen that's doing this. Can you see that? How it's flaring? Oh yeah, there's a difference right there. Look at that lens flare. There's definitely that famous Pixel 6 on the right, and on the left the 6A keeps it in control somewhat. It's more of a star shape, and on the right side looks more like a, I don't know, flower petals or a paw or something. But anyways, let's continue. And pardon my voice, by the way, I have COVID, or had COVID, but still recovering. We're heading out to the head of the river, or the opening of the river strait here. You can see the color rendering of the canoes here and the kayaks. Let me see, at least on the preview screen, viewfinder, both are quite similar, but I think the 6A might be a little bit more realistic. Oh no. Oh man. What's up with that? Alright, we're down by the river almost. Oh yeah, it's all muddy. Oh, muddy beaches and rocks. It's our usual spot right here. Okay, how's the rendering of the tree? Very similar, actually. So I'm not too surprised. Google should be keeping their algorithms about the same. Again, we're looking at the sun. Anything here? Nope, at least they're both in check here. Let's switch. Let me pause this or stop this, and then we'll switch views, and then you can see for yourselves. Again, the preview on the 6 is the screen. Yeah, I think it's the 90 Hz that's doing this. Not sure why. Something is different about the panel. How to set this up. How's the colors on this? HDRing. It's a little bit more washed out up here in the 6, and then more blue in the 6A. What's up with that? Yeah, and the sand. Yeah, that's darker, and it seems more realistic in the 6A and a little bit more washed out, at least in the preview screen of the regular 6. What do you guys think about it? Let's do photo mode. Okay, let's take a picture of this tree. Snap, snap, and then let's zoom out for wide angle, and then you can see, of course, the 6 captures a little bit more because it's 0.7 times rather than 0.6 times on the 6A. So far, the algorithm is quite consistent between the two. This is 2 times zoom, and then I'll do a 1 to 1 ratio, 100% crop, so you can see the quality of it. One thing, I'm going to switch over to the preview or the camera screen recording, and you can see one thing is missing here on the 6A is the motion option that you see on the 6, the action pan long exposure. It's not available here. I'm not sure if it's going to be added in or something that needs to be turned on, but that's never a setting that you needed to play with. So it's not here on the 6A, something to take note of. If you have any questions or comments about it, feel free to leave one down below. I just found out that the 6A was recording at 1080, so I just switched it to 4K 60 frames, and then now if you watch this pan again in the final recording, I mean on the preview, on the viewfinder, it's totally the same thing, my same opinion, but in the final you can see for yourselves which one do you prefer in terms of colors, in terms of contrast, HDRing, detail. This is the one that the 6 I think wins out because of that 50 megapixel. But I'm gonna say this, guys, and I've said this before and I'll say this again, that I think the 50 megapixel lens or sensor on the 6 and the 6 Pro is underutilized because Google is using the same algorithm or similar algorithm meant for their older tech, which the 6
6A has. So I'm gonna run again. So it's really, when you look at a final, they're very close, and so there's a reason for that, because the 50 megapixel lens is not used to its maximum capacity, which is unfortunate. So Google, I hope you're doing something about that. Let's open it up and really make full use of its capabilities. Okay, let's take a quick look at the zoom again. This is in photo mode, regular view, and then wide angle 0.6 times. So obviously the 6 is going to pull in a little bit further out, 0.7 times, and then let's do 2 times. That's optical for the 6 and then digital for the 6A. And then I'm going to pinch to zoom 7 times max on both. And you can see this is a weird thing. I'm not sure if it's the preview screen or the final too, but the preview screen on the 6A pulls in a little bit more, quite a bit. Look at the roof line and how much sky there is left, you can see on the regular 6. And just to confirm, look down here, it's all 7 times. So I'm not sure what's up with that.
So I'm standing by the roadside right now, so you can hear how these mics on the 6As handle phone calls, noise suppression, how's my tonality, and there's wind blowing through the trees slightly in my face, I think maybe about 5 miles an hour. And you can hear wind suppression if there's anything applied. You can comment down below to see how you feel. Let us know how you feel, which one you prefer. So I'm going to switch to the regular 6 right now so you can compare between the two. Alright, so I've switched over to the regular 6, and as traffic passes through, you can compare between the two. The wind is still blowing from the same direction from there. Behind the camera at 5 miles an hour roughly. Here comes a truck. How's the tire sounding when I keep talking? Comment down below again to let me know what you think. One of my favorite things about the 6A is the size and the build quality. It fits in your hands really well, your pockets, your purse, your purse, way better than this hunka chunka, let alone the giant 6 Pro and phones of that ilk. And even though this has a plastic back and corners all around, it doesn't feel cheap at all, guys. And personally, it has been my lifelong wish for more backplates to go back to being plastic, which unlike glass, doesn't shatter or crack the moment it kisses the pavement. But I do have one niggle. The edges of the volume and power button are rough, which whenever my fingers graze over them is somewhat unpleasant, dispelling the above average build quality image somewhat. Oh yes, and another small niggle, guys. Personally, as a quality control engineer in a previous life, this one kinda chuffs me. If you watch me unbox this 6A, I'll link the video right up here, you might have noticed this little small lint stuck in the bottom seam of the camera protector. You see me take it out of the box and that piece of lint is already there. I did not do anything to change that. It sticks out like a sore thumb. Proper QC wouldn't have let that slide. No it wouldn't. Now, I assumed back when I was doing the unboxing video that the display would be pretty great, despite the locked 60Hz refresh rate, remember that one? And guess what? I have yet to be proven wrong. And sure, the screen is not as smooth as say a 90 or 120Hz panel, but you won't really miss it unless you're gaming a lot or scroll smoothness is of utmost importance to you. Another thing I noticed is that the panel has perceivably wider whites sitting right next to the 6, so something to take note of right there. The Tensor Gen 1 chipset won't win any speed contests anytime soon, but make no mistake, it's still pretty potent when it needs to. So Tensor was designed to work best with all that Google and a Google phone has to offer, particularly a Pixel. So things like editing and processing images in Google Photos is always a few ticks faster than in other normal high-end phones. If you want to speak to type or translate or use Google Assistant, not even close. It's just faster, more reliable, and almost psychic on current generation Pixels. It's one of my most used features, in fact. Today is awesome, guys. We're going to be checking out the new Pixel 6a, the baby to the 6 and the 6 Pro. Today is awesome, guys. We're going to be checking out the new Pixel 6a, the baby to the 6 and the 6 Pro. And speaking of Tensor, like the regular 6, this thing can heat up under stress, such as heavy gaming or prolonged video recording in 4K, which is expected but something to be aware of. And it's definitely not as bad as compared to its bigger siblings, but I wish this thing ran a little cooler, especially considering Tensor isn't a speed demon unlike Snapdragon 8 series devices, for example. Depending on where you live, there is a thing called competition. We have the Nothing One already out there, Google's own Pixel 6 series, and I'll talk more about that later on. And I've also seen the Samsung S21 FE go for $450 brand new. The 6A may be new to the Google stable, but in terms of silicon and value, it's already starting to feel old. It would have been so nice to have either wireless charging or a higher refresh rate panel. And I know these were both cut, among other things, to meet the price point, but come on, including one of these, just one of these, Google would have future-proofed the 6A for quite a while more. One last, small negative. I think the thickness could have used a 1mm reduction. I like small phones and this thing is small, but in terms of thickness, it's roughly the same as the regular 6. So it would have been awesome if Mountain View made a compromise somewhere between this in terms of thickness and the super svelte Samsung Flip 3 right here. The Pixel 6a is stuck between a rock and a hard place. On one hand, the hardware is solid, it's speedy, the camera still churns out sweet images, the entire compact package is a return to form for Google and its A series of phones, and some might even say a redemption of sorts for the bug-ridden 6. But on the other hand, the timing of the 6A couldn't be worse in my opinion, because it'll get 15 minutes of fame before being overshadowed by all the flash and pomp of the 7 and the 7 Pro in October. And more importantly, being at the tail end of the 6 series developmental cycle, the 6A's mid-range price becomes its biggest enemy. So here's the thing. In some regions, the 6 and 6 Pro can now be had for near the same price as the 6A or even less. In fact, I recently saw the 6 Pro go for $270 at some Best Buys, for crying out loud. Still, taken in isolation, the 6A is a great buy, but personally I'll wait a few months, maybe for Black Friday, and I'll bet this will go for $250, mark my words. So anyways, with all that said, I'm giving the Google Pixel 6a a GearUP score of 8.8 out of 10. And this is how I broke it down to get the final score. If you have any questions about how I got there, feel free to comment down below. Well, I hope you enjoyed this review of the 6A, and thank you so much for joining me today. Come back next time. If you like what I do, by the way, thumbs up if you like it, comment nicely down below, subscribe and share it with your friends and family. Get me to 50,000 subs if you can. Visit my Patreon page as well, and also the super thanks button. That's another way you can financially support me as well. Super awesome if you could. And remember guys, I'll see you next time, and do something loving and kind for somebody in this world, because guess what? If you haven't seen the news, the world needs it more than ever, and it starts with you. I love y'all very much. Peace out. Whoosh.